What do Ryan Coogler's movie Sinners and Deion Sanders' son Shador Sanders have in common? Well, they're the most recent examples of America's undying commitment, not just to humbling Black people and keeping us in our place, but to manipulating and keeping the American public stupid, bigoted, and hyped up on rage in order to do it. I recently watched Ryan Coogler's new original movie, Sinners. I even had one of the stars of the movie, Omar Miller, on an episode of my podcast, Olay and Friends, where we had a spoiler-free discussion of the movie within a larger discussion about Black people being fed up with Black trauma porn and some folk thinking we need to do away with any depiction of Black life that's not joy. And you should go watch that episode when you're done here if you haven't. We filmed that episode before the movie came out, so naturally, I was dying to see it. I had my ass in the theater day of, and the movie did not disappoint, okay? It was phenomenal. And I was not the only person who thought so. Sinners broke records immediately. It's the highest grossing original movie since 2019. It earned $61 million opening weekend. It was and is #1 at the box office. It boasts an almost perfect Rotten Tomatoes score from both the audience and critics. It's the highest rated movie of Ryan Coogler's entire career. And this is a man with Fruitvale Station, Creed, and Black Panther under his belt. And Sinners is the first horror to ever receive an A rating from CinemaScore. Sinners is an objective, unimpeachable success. And yet, the headlines and articles reporting on the success did their best to cast doubt on these facts. The New York Times actually fixed their mouths to make their headline, Sinners is a box office success, in brackets, with a big asterisk. Variety reported, quote, Sinners has amassed $61 million in its global debut. It's a great result for an original R-rated film. Yet, the Warner Brothers release has a $90 million price tag before global marketing expenses, so profitability remains a ways away. Screen Rant said something similar. They reported, quote, in spite of its enormous box office success, the new horror movie may be facing a major hurdle because the Sinners budget is reportedly $90 million. Ain't that something? The movie made more than half of its budget back opening weekend, but they're talking like it might be a struggle. The funny thing about white supremacy is you can never beat them at their own game because they will change the rules of the game and move the goalposts while you're in the middle of scoring. Sinners is a box office hit, not by my account, but by each and every one of their standards that I listed earlier. But rather than concede that fact, they created a new standard to judge its success by. Hollywood and the media, like America at large, makes it a priority to suppress Black art, to cherry pick which kind of Black stories can be told, who can tell Black stories, which Black creators can make it. They make it their priority to underinvest, underproduce, and underpromote Black art. Yet, one of the primary ways they justify not investing, producing, or supporting Black projects is by pointing to the numbers and saying that they don't perform well, meaning that people don't want to see them. They create the barriers to entry and success for Black art, then use the results to justify the barriers they created to guarantee the results. They point to Black projects that have flopped or underperformed as an objective, non-racist justification for why they can't continue to invest in or produce Black art. And the public scrutiny by anyone other than Black people often ends there. Let's take a look at what's being discussed about Ryan Coogler's new movie, Sinners. We can see over 150 articles aggregated on this story, with the majority being from left and center-leaning sources. This is why Ground News is truly the perfect sponsor for this video, because making sure the media we're consuming is objective and unbiased is literally their bread and butter. Not only does their app and website let you compare how the media is framing any given story worldwide and get context on each source, in this particular climate where everyone's targeting you with clickbait and misinformation, where it's hard to tell what's real, what's fake news, and what's just straight up propaganda, a tool like Ground News is invaluable, especially when you're literally making a video about how the media manipulates us. You can follow along at ground.news/Olay. Left-leaning sources like HuffPost states, Sinners is a box office hit and proves critics wrong, suggesting an underdog narrative where establishment opinions were proven wrong, while right-leaning Washington Times compares the success of the movie against the new Star Wars movie that is also out. At a glance, we can also see that over 95% of these sources are rated as highly factual, giving us insights into how credible the source is and the timeliness of their corrections. Ground News really can't be beat because it makes it easy for me to make sure that I am not just just spewing unsubstantiated mess at you. Go to ground.news/Olay or scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in my bio to subscribe. Ground News is giving my viewers 40% off their unlimited access Vantage plan. This is their best deal of the year and it'll only be available for a limited time, so you better jump on it. And Ground News is subscriber funded, so you won't see any ads on their website, which contributes to sensationalism and clickbait reporting. By subscribing, you're not only getting an amazing resource, but you're supporting their work directly and helping keep media reporting honest. Thank you for sponsoring the video, Ground News. Back to it. But Sinners thrived in spite of the barriers to success. It did what Hollywood constantly asserts that Black movies, especially original Black films and one with subject matter like Sinners, can't do. And because it did, the standard for judging its success magically transformed into whether it recouped its entire budget opening weekend, which has not only never been the standard, it mysteriously wasn't even the standard to judge the performance of any other movies it beat at the box office that weekend, including a Minecraft movie. It is such obvious goalpost shifting that wasn't just obvious to Black people who immediately called it out. Even Ben Stiller was so blown away, he quoted Variety's tweet and said, "In what universe does a $60 million opening for an original studio movie warrant this headline?" And he's right. Moreover, Franklin J. Leonard provided the receipts that reveal the answer to Ben Stiller's question, which is that the only universe where that's the headline for a $61 million opening for an original film is the one where the film is Black. Because the same New York Times that called Sinners a box office success with a big asterisk called Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood's opening weekend, where it made 10% less money than Sinners from 10% more theaters, simply a box office success. No mention of its also $90 million budget. The reason these kind of tactics are so especially insidious and dangerous is because they're using facts to lie to you, while creating the appearance of objectivity and impartiality, leaving you to unwittingly internalize what you think is the fair and honest truth, that Black films flop, enabling Hollywood to continue over Black creatives and stories under the guise of it just being business. They don't come right out and tell you that they want Black films to fail, that they only want certain depictions of Blackness and Black people, that they want to continue limiting and underinvesting in our stories, our art, and our creatives. They don't tell you outright that Sinners isn't successful, because they can't. So instead, what they do, they appear to just be presenting you with the facts. The movie did make $61 million opening weekend, and it does have a $90 million budget. But they know why they're choosing to present that information in that way. It's a means of placing a big asterisk on the success of this successful Black film, which would never be done to their white counterparts, because the goal is to ensure that the success of Sinners does not undermine the idea that Black original movies can't dominate at the box office, that Black creators shouldn't be given deals like what Ryan Coogler got, and to quell the celebration around the movie in order to hurt its momentum, which thankfully has been unsuccessful. Sinners will probably have earned more than $100 million by the time you see this video. But the average person, especially those who aren't Black and or tuned into the reception of new movies or the records the movies are breaking, would read those headlines and articles that are wrongfully putting asterisks on Sinners' success as those outlets just stating the objective facts. And they would incorrectly see the backlash to that as people just trying to shoot the messenger because they don't like the message. The average person reading those headlines does not have the context for how those same outlets report on white films performing similarly. And all of that made me think about a comment that someone left on the episode of Olay and Friends, where we discussed Sinners in relation to Black trauma porn and what kind of Black movies are supported by Hollywood and audiences. That comment read, quote, "We need to talk about the campaigns to discredit and diminish the popularity of Black movies. I often see the same derogatory sentences repeated over and over in comment sections regarding Black media, but specifically Black movies. It's organized smear campaigns." End quote. We made that episode before the movie even came out, so I didn't initially make too much of that comment. But after the movie was released, and I saw the New York Times, Variety, Screen Rant, and others all coincidentally embrace the same language and reasoning to shift the goalposts to discredit the movie's success, that YouTube comment has been at the forefront of my mind, and it's made me think of many other examples of how media reporting in Hollywood and celebrity culture is done in a way to, 1, substantiate biases, and 2, manufactured consent. What do I mean by that? Both mainstream media as well as independent media's coverage and response to the live action remakes of The Little Mermaid and Snow White are good recent examples of both things. Long before the release of the live action remake of The Little Mermaid, an army of haters had already been preying on its downfall because Halle Bailey was cast as the star, Ariel the Little Mermaid. How dare we cast a Black woman to play a mermaid, right? Am I right? And while we'd like to think that it's just the racist incel hillbillies who foam at the mouth on the internet every time they see a Hollywood, the media, and the powers that be are fundamentally united at the core of their issue, is that they do not want to see Black people in the media. They fear a changing media landscape that might eventually represent its audiences who consume it. And while the racist incel hillbillies are much more forthright with their unadulterated racism and tell us outright that they simply don't want no in their movies, our movies, any movies, get these off the screen, the media that feels the same way knows that it can't take that approach. They must instead convince you that it's you, the audience, that does not want to see Black people in these roles. So they do what they did to Sinners. They frame a box office success as a flop in order to discourage Hollywood from doing this again and to discourage audiences from watching, which is why you can find countless articles, YouTube videos, and think pieces describing Halle Bailey's The Little Mermaid, a movie that made $570 million at the box office, as a flop. And just like they invented a new standard to judge Sinners by in order to cast doubt on its success, they did the same to The Little Mermaid, refusing to acknowledge its obvious success, and instead, outlets like Forbes said things like this, quote, according to Disney, it grossed $570 million at the global box office, which was respectable, but a far cry from the $1.7 billion haul of its live-action version of The Lion King in 2019 and the $1 billion that Aladdin made in the same year. This is an ironic testament to a regularly cited Black saying that we have to be twice as good to get anywhere, to be respected, to be acknowledged. Because The Little Mermaid live action had a $240.2 million budget and far out-earned that budget at the box office with $570 million, which means the movie with the Black mermaid that was swearing people weren't gonna go see because they couldn't bear to have to look at a Black woman play such a sacred role, succeeded. So you know what that means? Time to move the goalposts so that we can cast out on that success, because we wouldn't want people or studios getting the idea that casting Black people in these roles can be lucrative or well received. So the standard becomes, it's not good enough for it to be a success in its own right. It needed to match or surpass the performance of two cherry-picked Disney live actions that out-earned it. No mention of the many it out-earned, like the live action remakes of Cinderella, Mulan, or Dumbo. So that's an example of how they substantiate biases. Now, the media's coverage of the live-action Snow White, starring Rachel Zegler, illustrates my second point about how the media uses Hollywood and celeb culture to manufacture consent for social and political issues. Like The Little Mermaid, Snow White had an anti-fan base praying for it to fail from the moment Rachel Zegler was cast. These people are so racist, they must have had to investigate to find out this woman was Colombian and thus too ethnic, just so they could be mad. So at minimum, regardless of whether the film was good or successful, I expected it to be met with the Sinners and Little Mermaid treatment at minimum. But unfortunately for Snow White, it wasn't a box office hit like Sinners or The Little Mermaid. So the treatment is even worse, because now they don't have to try to reframe a success into a failure. Now they get to simply exploit the failure for their own agenda. Let me explain what I mean. Snow White had a $240 million budget, and since being released just last month, it's earned $195 million at the box office. So while the movie has yet to recoup its investment, it's important to understand the moment this movie came out, media, both mainstream and independent, made it their business, not just to declare the movie a flop, but to specifically claim it flopped because its star Rachel Zegler f***ed up and put her foot in her mouth by being pro-Palestine and not supporting Israel's war on the Palestinian people. There are 1,000,001 articles and videos chastising Rachel Zegler for ruining the success of the movie and all this bullshit that's designed to manufacture consent for Israel. That's all it is. They want to create the impression that this movie flopped because the majority of people are so supportive of Israel that they refuse to see a movie starring this woman who opposes them. 1,000,001 articles and videos declaring that the movie flopped because Rachel Zegler is too controversial for being pro-Palestine. Whole time Gal Gadot, I don't know how you say it, also starred in the movie as the evil queen, and she's been highly controversial and criticized her entire career for being an unabashed Zionist. But that, of course, is never blamed for the movie's failure, because the message is clear. Being pro-Palestine is the problem. Meanwhile, in reality, people not lost in the message the machine is pushing credit the movie's failure to neither Rachel or Gal's political views, but instead just to the movie being mid for several reasons, having boring musical numbers, bad makeups, no beautiful gowns, etc., etc. But that doesn't suit the agenda, because it's not about truth or the movie. It's merely an opportunity to manufacture consent for Israel. And just like there are countless examples of the media's deliberate efforts to keep Hollywood in the media both white and pro-white, there are also countless examples of the concerted effort made to humble and chill the potential of Black performance and success. but the one that is on the forefront of my mind right now is Shedeur Sanders. The 2025 NFL Draft showed me one of the most truly infuriating demonstrations of buck breaking and trying to humble a black man that I have ever seen displayed on my TV screen. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, who Shedeur Sanders is or what happened, let me give you the SparksNote version. Shedeur Sanders is the son of Hall of Fame super athlete Deion Primetime Sanders, who dominated in both the NFL and the MLB. And Deion Sanders isn't just a celebrated former athlete though. He is a celebrated college football coach today. In 2021, Deion Sanders became the coach of HBCU Jackson State University, and that was significant for reasons that I think Yahoo spoke best to. So I'm just gonna quote them. Yahoo News reported that when Deion Primetime Sanders took over as head coach of Jackson State University in 2020, few expected him to ignite a cultural renaissance within HBCU football. But in just over 2 seasons, Sanders not only elevated Jackson State into a national contender, he reshaped the narrative surrounding HBCU athletics as a whole. Known for his Hall of Fame career and larger-than-life personalities, Sanders brought unprecedented attention, elite recruiting, and a renewed sense of pride to a program that had long been overshadowed by bigger, more well-funded schools. Sanders quickly turned Jackson State into a powerhouse. After a shortened 2020 debut, he led the Tigers to an 11-1 season in 2021 and a Southwestern Athletic Conference championship. His son, quarterback Shedeur Sanders, became a breakout star, and defensive force James Houston later went on to be drafted by the NFL. Travis Hunter, the former 5-star phenomenon, brought national headlines when he chose Jackson State over Florida State. Both Hunter and Shedeur helped redefine what elite talent at an HBCU could look like, a testament to the lasting impact they made in such a short span. Beyond the wins, Sanders brought something HBCUs had long lacked: spotlight. Jackson State games were suddenly featured on ESPN. National sports media began regularly covering SWAC matchups. Sanders used social media to amplify his players and advocate for equal treatment. "I truly believe that God called me to Jackson State," Sanders said during a 2021 press conference. "This isn't just about football, it's about changing lives and leveling the playing field." His celebrity status drew attention from sponsors, media outlets, and fans who had never previously paid attention to HBCU football. Sanders also exposed the resource gap HBCUs face compared to major universities. He spoke openly about outdated facilities, unequal travel conditions, and lack of national respect. By using his platform to spotlight these issues, he pushed administrators, alumni, and stakeholders to reinvest in these historic institutions. His impact rippled beyond Jackson State as other HBCU programs saw boosts in recruiting, donor support, and media exposure, proving the value of investing in Black college athletics. End quote. And they hate him for it. Deion Sanders is so impactful to the boys on his team that when he left Jackson State to coach at the University of Colorado Boulder, 9 of his players followed him there, including his son Shedeur, who was an undeniably talented quarterback that was expected to be a top 10 pick. But because the NFL doesn't like the way Deion or his son carry themselves, that they're the first to acknowledge their own talents, that they don't make themselves small, that they treat the NFL like the NFL should be honored to have them, the white men making the decisions for these teams that are filled with young Black men they've collected and expect to control, decided that they would collectively make an example of Shedeur, that they'd show him what it looks like when you don't bend the knee and humble yourself. They didn't just make sure he wasn't a top 10 pick anymore. They didn't just not pick him in the first round. They didn't pick him in the second, nor the third, nor the fourth. He was a 5th round pick. A man who, by their standards, their own metrics that they had up on our television screen for 3 nights while he was passed up for far less talented men by their standards, who they told us was supposed to be a top pick. But it was more important not just to humble him and to humiliate him, but to make sure he would not be paid his worth. And I think that is a severely left out part of the narrative. I see a lot of folk trying to tell themselves it doesn't matter where he got drafted so long as he was. He'll shine in the NFL and that'll show them. But that's a bunch of bullshit. Not only does it matter where he got drafted, it matters a lot. The difference in pay between 1st round draft picks and 5th round draft picks is astronomical. They did way more than play in his face. It wasn't just a humiliation ritual. It wasn't just a symbolic lashing. It was a real one. One that not only denied him what he's already earned, but guarantees that he'll continue being denied what he earns. He was forced to have to sell himself to a team for far less than he could have and would have commanded based on his skill set. So this white corporation gets this man's talent, his body, his physical labor at a substantial bargain basement discount. Moreover, the NFL basically got a 2-for-1 special because not only did they spit on Shedeur and take money from him, they made money off him. Think about it. Not only did they get the pleasure of making him sit through 3 days of going undrafted, they undoubtedly made more money by the many more of us who tuned in solely to see if and when he got drafted, who posted all over social media about it. They caused Black people pain and outrage, and then they profit off of it. And they'll continue to profit, because not only will they continue to exploit Shador and all the other athletes, many of us will probably spin around and buy a Shador jersey to support him, which ultimately still just makes these motherfuckers richer. How the NFL did Shador Sanders is a true illustration of not only how white supremacy will bend over backwards to humble and humiliate a Black man who dare be confident, cocky, or God forbid arrogant about his own God-given and hard work for abilities. And not only will white America relish in it and defend it, so will many Black people who've not only internalized this idea that we not only need to be humble, but that we need to be humbled. They also love this football shit so much that they refuse to see the obvious racism and plantation politics the NFL and the NBA openly engage in, and they soak up any non-racist explanation for racist shit they do. For days now, I have just been shaking my head at Black people, especially Black men, who have found themselves clamoring to delight in Shador's misfortune and or refusing to acknowledge that it's racist. My friend, New York Times bestseller Frederick Joseph, whose new book, This Thing of Ours, is now available for pre-order, so go get that, made a video that I really think did a damn good job explaining in the simplest terms why what the NFL did to Shador is racist. So I'm including it here for those struggling to understand, and watch every bit.
This Shador Sanders conversation is pissing me off, like badly, because it's such a good example of how little people actually understand white supremacy and racism, and yet somehow everyone thinks that they are experts in white supremacy and racism to be able to be the arbiters of what isn't racist, what isn't white supremacy, especially from people who have never experienced white supremacy in certain ways, who have never considered white supremacy in certain ways, right? Just because you can say, oh, it's wrong for the police to barge into a woman's home while she's asleep and murder her, or it's wrong for the police to kneel on somebody's neck until they suffocate and die. Okay, those are not the only ways that white supremacy and racism manifest, especially not in the daily life of Black and brown people. And this is something that I think also because people internalize these things so much, these systems and these constructs and this history, that even a lot of Black and brown people don't understand white supremacy and racism, not truly. So what I've seen a lot in relation to Shador is this idea of, well, he's so egotistical, we got to humble him. Well, that's interesting, because I don't see the same narrative about white quarterbacks. I've seen that actually be something that's a positive, right? Oh, they have edge to them. We want our quarterbacks to have edge. So there's that. But largely, again, the idea of needing to humble or break down a Black person is racist. It's racist, right? The idea that you want to dilute an unapologetic young Black man who has bravado, who again has deep confidence, sometimes maybe erring on arrogance, but that you feel like you need to humble, and not just humble, but now humiliate him, a top 10 Heisman candidate. It's white supremacy, right? You have a bunch of team owners, right? Largely white men, colluding to break down a young Black man. Oh yeah, no. We're gonna teach this boy a lesson. That is racism. That is absolutely racism. And when people bringing up things like, oh, well, other Black quarterbacks have been drafted, other Black players have been drafted. Yes, it's a largely Black league that is also a racist league, right? Did Colin Kaepernick not happen? What? And yeah, also, yes, other Black quarterbacks were taken. Cam Ward, as an example, was taken number 1. But Blackness is not a monolith, right? Just because Cam Ward shows up in a way as a Black person that fits the mold of what the NFL is looking for more, in sort of like the quiet, sort of palatable Blackness, doesn't mean anything in relation to Shador, right? Like, again, Blackness is not a monolith. You can love one Black person and despise another. There are Black people who are Trump supporters. There are Black people who are anti-Black. Being Black doesn't inherently mean that you are the same type of Black as somebody else. And yes, it is racist to think so. And also to this point, yeah, if we talk about the first round, sure, I can see Shador maybe not going. Second round, dicey. We are now going into the 4th round of the NFL draft, and Shedeur Sanders has not been drafted. A top 10 Heisman candidate. And then people are also saying, like, oh, well, it's because of his father. He's a Nepo baby. Well, that's interesting, right? Sure, maybe. But never have I heard being a Nepo baby such an issue, right, for people otherwise. Because realistically, when Eli Manning was drafted, Archie Manning's son, Peyton Manning's brother, he was difficult. So much so that he didn't want to go to the team that drafted him, the Chargers. So he forced himself to get traded to the Giants. But Shedeur is difficult. Okay. Cool. This is all largely rooted in the same reason why Lamar Jackson wasn't drafted until late in the draft, right? When he should have probably been the first pick. This is a multi-time MVP now, but before he was just, for lack of a better term, an urban hood black guy who should have probably been a wide receiver until he showed you, nah, I'm a quarterback, right? Racism, white supremacy. Y'all don't know what you're talking about, right? I mean, the last thing to say is even the idea that so many of you are getting off on the fact that this is happening to Shedeur is because you actually hate black people. And some of you have internalized, even as black and brown people, internalized anti-blackness without realizing it, right? How blackness shows up in a way that works for you or doesn't work for you is largely rooted in white supremacy, racism, and anti-blackness. Wearing the chain, having the bravado, throwing the rollie up, while also producing, yeah, you don't like that. You want your black boys to go to church, be quiet, and just say, I have nothing to say. Football and God over everything. We know what you want. And we know why you want it. Racism. Simple as that.
What's really important about the buck breaking of Shedeur Sanders is what it tells us about how the masses feel. When we talked about how the media tries to in some ways trick you, covertly manipulate you into questioning the success of the movie Sinners, it's insidious. But with Shedeur, they're not trying to trick you as to what's happening and why. They're simply banking on you to share in the same kind of internalized anti-blackness that they believe justifies it. They are publicly and widely discussing this idea that a black man who could have been a top 10 pick, certainly a first round pick, deserves to find himself picked at the bottom of the 5th round solely because he's too cocky, too arrogant. And that's what it's about. The NFL treats these young black men as chattel who should be undyingly grateful for the opportunities they worked for and make themselves small, meek, and grateful. And typically, based on how the NFL has made its living preying on the physical prowess and impoverished backgrounds of young black men who spent their entire lives dreaming of the NFL as their one shot of making it, they typically get that. But that's not what they get from the proud son of proud-ass Deion Sanders, and they hate them for it. The NFL wants to send the message that what happened to Shedeur is what happened to who don't get down and stay down when told. And that's not just the culture or covert feelings of the plantation-ass team owners, but of their like-minded fans who don't hide how they expect their to give it up. Look at how they're virally celebrating Cam Ward. In other words, he's one of the good ones and Shedeur is not. And not only are they publicly and widely discussing it, they're sending out bots to do it. I made a few posts on threads about Shedeur in the NFL draft, and all of those posts were flooded with accounts, all spewing the exact same talking points about how Shedeur isn't even talented, how he's not anything special, how he's too cocky. And you click on these accounts and you see they have no other posts. And then I remembered that YouTube comment from earlier. We need to talk about the campaigns to discredit and diminish the popularity of black movies. I often see the same derogatory sentences repeated over and over in comment sections regarding black media, but specifically black movies. It's organized smear campaigns. The commenter was talking about black movies there, but the same is true here. This is a campaign to discredit Shedeur, to place a big asterisk on his success, to cast doubt on whether someone whose stats we can see, who we know was expected to be a top pick, even deserved to be picked at all. Just like those headlines and articles about Sinners synced up their talking points. So too have those talking about Shador. But beyond that, what they're doing with these narratives, with these bots that are sent to flood social media, is manufacturing consent for not just the idea that Shador deserved this, but that Black men like him are supposed to be humbled. I'm gonna leave my comments on Shador there because I know that FD is gonna do what needs to be done over on his channel, and I'm probably having an Olay and Friends episode about it. All in all, what I wanna say to y'all is that the media is lying to you, and their lies got y'all sounding like anti-Black, bigoted dodo birds, so I suggest y'all start jumping these outlets, okay? The Illuminativerse is huge and always expanding, so let me tell you where to find everything. Subscribe to my main channel, Illuminati, to find my Illuminati productions, which are my long-form video essays, my deep dives, and my backlog of content like Iconic and Illuminati joints are all on the main channel. Subscribe to my new channel, Illuminati Politics, so you don't miss my interviews with Brad Lander and Zoran Memdani, who are running for New York City mayor, as well as my State of the Union type addresses that I do with my O Squareds, and any explicitly political content I have planned for you going forward. Subscribe to Illuminati Pop for all my TV and movie takes, reviews, and breakdowns. We have all the fun over there, and we also have a Patreon for Illuminati Pop where you can get all the videos uncensored. Subscribe to Olay and Friends for my podcast, Olay and Friends. Subscribe to Illuminati Bites if you want my takes but don't have an hour plus to spend. And last but not least, subscribe to my Substack Illuminati for all my writing.